Eugene L. Waxman, W-A-X-M-A-N. Spell it right. Well, my title when I got out was Chief of Management Analysis, Headquarters 4th Air Force, Hamilton Air Force Base. I was Lieutenant Colonel. Okay. I joined the 21st Wing in February of '54. Okay, that was at George Air Force Base in California, where the wing was staging to take over a NATO base in France. I reported into the 21st directly from the hospital in Sampson, New York. I'd been hospitalized for about 7 months with polio, and I just recovered and was back on active duty. This was my first active duty station after the polio. I worked with the 21st there at George until November of '54, when I went over with the advance party of the 21st to Chambley to sort of set up to get buildings up, offices up, barracks up, and all that type of stuff. That's when I met George. George was the base supply officer at that time, did a hell of a job. And they had no place to put me because my primary AFSC, that's Air Force Specialization Code, was in procurement. I'd been the base supply officer down at Andrews Air Force Base, the base purchasing and contracting officer at Andrews Air Force Base and a couple of other places before that. And also at Barksdale Field, way back there in World War II. They had nothing to do with me, for me, at Chambley, because we didn't have any local purchase capability yet. So they sent me down to work with George in supply. And I worked with him to help getting the place set up. And yeah, like I say, he did a real good job. And I don't know what happened, but someplace a couple of months down the road, I was at the officers club, and the wing commander came up and said, "Gene, I want you to take over base supply temporarily." He says, "Just until I get a qualified supply officer, and it'd be a couple of months at the most. And by that time, we'll be ready to set up the purchasing and contracting office." Well, you don't really argue with a full colonel, and I was a captain then. So I became the base accountable supply officer when George left. And I was still the base accountable supply officer out into November '57 when I came home, except for a 3-month temporary duty assignment I had to Toul-Rosière, which was another fighter wing down a road about 30 kilometers. They lost their supply officer, and they were in a transition between the F-86 and the F-100. And at the same time, they were mechanizing the supply account, and they had no supply officer there. So Colonel Baker, who was my boss at that time, agreed to put me on loan over there for 3 months to get them started. But the rest of the time I was at Chambley. Well, I'd heard, and it was pretty well substantiated by actions, that about 1/3 of the French Parliament at that time was communist. And we were just south of Thionville, big mining center, which was strictly communist. And anytime we wanted to go up to Luxembourg, which I did regularly to change money and to play golf, we had to go through Thionville. And of course, we never wore uniforms off base. We always wore civilian clothes off base. But you had to be very careful going through. Don't break any laws or anything, or you're going to be in big trouble. We had a real, well, I would say an emergency early in '55, in the winter of '55. The whole heating system went out in the base. And just coincidentally, the whole electrical system went out at the same time. So no emergency generators, no nothing. I'm sure that was sabotage. It was too well planned not to be. But of the French people themselves, I liked them. I always said if you have 2 Frenchmen in a room at the same time, you have 3 opinions. and that was especially in a bar. I was a bachelor over there, incidentally, the whole time I was there. I met an Air Force nurse while I was there, though, and I came home a year before she did and picked her up at the Air Base when she returned to the States and we got married. So I say France gave me something. One other thing that might be interesting, Colonel Baker, who took over from Colonel Rowland as the wing commander later on, talked me into applying for a regular commission. I was a reserve officer on active duty, like most of us were. And the reason for it was we had a reduction in force in the Air Force in '57. And most of the officers, and some damn good officers, we lost were all reservists. None of the regulars were lost. And he said, we'll protect you this time, but I don't think we can do it again. You ought to get a regular commission. And I told him I didn't think I'd qualify for it because I wasn't rated, I wasn't a pilot, I wasn't a navigator or a bombardier or anything like that. I wasn't on flying status. We were sort of orphans. And he said, don't worry about it, just make the application, I'll take care of it. Presto, a couple of months later, my regular commission came through. And in '46, at the end of World War II, I got out of the service and took an inactive commission in the reserves. I never saw any combat, though. I fought the whole war in the States in training command. In Camp Korea in '51, I was recalled. I was still a bachelor, though. And I said, the heck with this nonsense, they're going to keep me this time. And that's what happened. And I stayed around and retired in '69.